Imagine being cut out of your grandmother's will, not because she forgot you, but because your family made sure you never got the invite. They called me ungrateful, locked me out of her house, and read the will without me. But what they didn't know, Grandma had left something behind, and only I was meant to find it. And when the lawyer finally told me the truth, they couldn't even look me in the eye. My name is Natalie Collins. I'm 27 years old, and I found out I was officially erased from my family's story 1 week after my grandmother died. Let me tell you exactly how it went down. It started with a funeral. A quiet, cold one. The kind where everyone looks like they're posing for a magazine, not mourning the matriarch of a family. My grandmother, Margaret Collins, passed away at the age of 84. She'd been the heart of our family for as long as I could remember. The kind of woman who remembered birthdays, baked pies from scratch, and somehow made even silence feel warm. But the moment she was gone, so was the warmth. At the funeral, my Aunt Sharon barely nodded at me. Uncle Charles gave me that fake polite smile you give someone you hope never speaks to you. My cousins, Danielle and Brett, spent most of the service whispering to each other and checking their phones like they had something better to do than bury the woman who raised all of us. Me? I just kept my head down. I didn't have the energy to argue or prove I belonged. I hadn't in years. It's not like I'd done anything wrong. I just didn't fit. I worked retail and picked up freelance gigs to make ends meet. I didn't have a flashy degree or a wealthy fiancé. My clothes weren't brand name. I didn't show up with dramatic makeup or a luxury car. I just came. Like a granddaughter should. Quiet. Respectful. Heartbroken. I was the only one crying too. When I tried to hug Sharon after the service, she flinched. "You shouldn't have worn that," she muttered, looking at my coat. "Grandma always said black made you look washed out." I swallowed the insult and walked away. But the real gut punch came 2 days later. I had taken the afternoon off work to visit Grandma's house one last time. I wanted to say goodbye in my own way. I had no idea the family had planned the will reading for that exact afternoon. I knocked on the front door, holding a small bouquet of tulips, her favorite. Sharon opened it, looking surprised. But not in a good way. "What are you doing here, Natalie?" I blinked. I thought I could stop by, say goodbye properly. Maybe sit in her room for a bit. Behind her, I saw Charles in a blazer, sipping scotch. The living room was filled with hushed voices and polished shoes. Danielle caught my eye, then quickly looked away. Sharon stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind her. "Now's not a good time." "Why?" I asked. She crossed her arms. "The family's handling estate matters. It's private." "Estate matters?" I asked, confused. "Like the will." Her mouth twitched. Grandma didn't want everyone there. My heart dropped. "You're saying she didn't want me there?" Charles's voice floated from behind the door. "She was ungrateful. Always has been. Margaret knew that. Sharon didn't even try to deny it. You didn't show up for dinners. You missed Danielle's engagement party. You didn't visit enough." "Are you serious?" My voice cracked. "I visited Grandma at the hospital alone. I called her every weekend. I was the only one who took her to her physical therapy appointments after her fall." "She said you were cold on the phone," Sharon snapped. Distant. It hurt her. I stared at her, stunned. "So you just banned me from her will reading?" "She didn't include you," Charles said, suddenly appearing beside her. "There's no point pretending otherwise. Go home, Natalie." I didn't move. For a moment, I couldn't even breathe. Then Sharon said it. The word that would echo in my head for days. She said you were ungrateful. And with that, they shut the door. I stood there shaking. The tulips slipped from my hand, landing sideways on the welcome mat. I turned and walked down the steps, heart pounding, vision blurry. I cried in my car. Not because of the money. I didn't even want anything. I just wanted to be seen, remembered, respected. But apparently, that was too much to ask. Back home in my tiny apartment, I sat on the couch in silence for hours. I thought about the time I helped Grandma learn to use FaceTime. The afternoons we watched old musicals. The time I stayed overnight with her during the big snowstorm when no one else picked up their phones. But none of that mattered now, did it? They rewrote the story. And in their version, I was just selfish, ungrateful, discardable. And then the twist. The next morning, I got an email. It came from a man named Elliot Gray. The subject line was simple, a letter from Margaret Collins. At first, I thought it was spam. Then I opened it. Hello, Natalie. I'm an attorney with Gray and Winters. Your grandmother left a sealed envelope in her safe deposit box, addressed specifically to you. She made it clear this should be delivered separately from the estate process. Please contact me when you're available to pick it up. Bess. Elliot Gray. I read it 3 times. She had remembered me. She'd left something. And more importantly, she didn't trust the others with it. I replied immediately. The next day, I was sitting in a quiet office across from Elliot Gray, a kind-faced man in his 50s with wire-rimmed glasses and a soft voice. He placed a navy blue envelope on the table. My name, Natalie, was written in Grandma's unmistakable handwriting. She instructed me not to read it, he said. But she did tell me this, whatever's in there is yours and yours alone. My hands trembled as I picked it up. I opened the flap carefully. Inside was a folded sheet of stationery and something wrapped in tissue paper. I unfolded the note first. My dearest Natalie, if you're reading this, it means they kept you out. I wish I could say I'm surprised. I wish I had more time to protect you from them. But you've always been strong. The house, the one on Maple Lane, it's yours. I never changed the deed, no matter what Charles said. It's hidden under your name in a trust fund they know nothing about. Elliot will explain. They said you were ungrateful, that you didn't care. But you were the only one who ever truly saw me. Please don't let their noise drown your heart. I love you. Always. Grandma. I gasped. My grandmother's house? The one she lived in for 40 years? The one they were probably planning to sell off? I looked at Elliot. She said there's a trust? He smiled gently. Yes. I have the documents. You're the sole beneficiary. And just like that, everything flipped. I hadn't just been remembered. I'd been trusted. And the family, the same people who banned me from her while reading, had no idea. Not yet anyway. But they were about to find out. I didn't tell anyone about the letter. Not yet. Not Sharon, not Charles, not even my coworkers. It felt like if I said it out loud, it would disappear, like a dream I hadn't woken up from yet. But it wasn't a dream. I had the deed. Elliot walked me through the trust, step by step. Grandma had set it up 3 years ago. Quietly. No witnesses from the family. Just her, Elliot, and one bank officer as the second signature. The house on Maple Lane, fully paid off, modest but lovely, was in a private trust under my name. No one else in the family even knew the trust existed. Elliot handed me the keys in a small white envelope. This isn't just a property, he told me. It's a message. She wanted you to know she saw through everything. I stood outside the house the next day. It was a little dusty, the shutters needed paint, and the yard had been overgrown with weeds, probably since her health started declining last winter. But it was still beautiful in that quiet, homey way. White siding, blue shutters, and a front porch swing I remembered falling asleep on during summer nights. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. Everything was still there. The smell of old perfume and lemon polish. The china cabinet with her owl figurine collection. The creaky floorboard just inside the living room that everyone learned to avoid. It was like she left everything untouched, like she wanted me to find it just this way. And that's when I realized something else. The family thought they had control over everything. The will, the money, the decisions. But this house was off their radar. That meant I had the upper hand now. And I wasn't going to waste it. I started small. I hired a cleaner and a locksmith. Changed the locks first. The last thing I wanted was Charles or Sharon wandering in, thinking they still had access. I didn't trust any of them not to try to sneak their way into this somehow. I also got a security camera installed over the front door, just in case. Then I sat down in Grandma's kitchen, a space I hadn't stepped foot in since I was a teenager, and made a list. It was time to figure out exactly what they were hiding and what they thought they got away with. Because if Grandma had been smart enough to set this house aside for me, she may have done other things too. Things they didn't expect. Things they didn't want found. I started with the office. The room was tiny, really just a repurposed guest room, but Grandma always called it her command center. It had a metal file cabinet, a cluttered desk, and a locked drawer I never remembered seeing before. The drawer wasn't difficult to open. It took me 20 minutes and a bent paper clip, but eventually I got it. Inside was a small wooden box. And inside that were letters. Stacks of them. Not from Grandma. From Charles and Sharon. I scanned through them one by one, and my stomach twisted tighter with each one. They weren't sweet family notes. They were begging letters. Manipulative letters. From both of them, asking for money. Guilt-tripping her. Saying things like, Danielle's wedding would mean so much to you, and it's not like Natalie appreciates what she has. There it was. The pattern. They were painting me as the villain while slowly bleeding her dry. There was even one from Sharon demanding Grandma put her on the deed to the house, so there's no confusion when you're gone. I kept flipping. And then I found something worse. A withdrawal slip. $12,000, taken out 6 months before Grandma passed. Signed in her shaky handwriting. In the margin, she'd written one sentence in small, crooked print. For Charles, I don't agree, but I'm tired. That broke me. She knew she was being used. She just didn't have the energy to fight anymore. But she still set the house aside for me. She made a final choice, a quiet one, behind their backs. And they had no idea. Later that evening, I stopped by Sharon's place. I didn't knock on the door. I didn't go inside. I just left a small envelope on her doorstep. Inside was a copy of the house deed, with my name clearly printed on the last page. I didn't need a fight. I just wanted her to know the game had changed. The next morning, I got a text from Danielle. What is this? Mom is freaking out. I didn't respond. 2 hours later, a message from Charles. We should talk. Still nothing from me. Then Sharon called. I let it ring. And then I blocked her number. It felt strange at first. This new power. I wasn't used to being the one in control. But I liked it. It was quiet. Peaceful. But short-lived. Because the following week, something happened that threw everything into chaos. I got a visit. Not from Sharon. From Danielle. She showed up at the house around 6 p.m. I saw her through the camera, standing nervously on the porch in heels and too much makeup for a casual evening. Typical Danielle. Always performing, even when begging. I let her stand there for a while before finally opening the door. She smiled like we were old friends. Hey, Nat. I crossed my arms. What do you want? She blinked. Can we talk? Please. I said nothing. Just stepped aside. She walked in like she still owned the place. Looked around. Well, looks the same. That's because it is. She sat down on the edge of the couch. Okay. So, look. I'm not going to pretend I knew about this house situation. I didn't. I had no idea Grandma left it to you. I raised an eyebrow. But you were okay banning me from the will reading? She winced. That wasn't my decision. That was Mom and Uncle Charles. I swear. I thought you just didn't want to come. Right, I said. And now that you know I own the house, suddenly you want to talk. She swallowed. Look, I know our family's messed up, and I'm not proud of how everyone treated you. But this place, it means something to all of us. Too late for that, I said flatly. She hesitated. Then her voice changed. Quieter. Slower. I just thought you should know. Uncle Charles is planning to contest the trust. I froze. What? I overheard him on the phone. Said he's meeting someone next week. He thinks if he can prove Grandma was sick when she signed it, he can get the house back in probate. I stared at her. And why are you telling me this? She sighed. Because I know he's wrong. Grandma didn't trust him. And she shouldn't have. I don't want anything from you, Natalie. I want out of all this crap. I didn't say anything. But part of me believed her. For once, Danielle looked scared. Not fake dramatic scared. Genuinely scared. She left after that. I didn't promise her anything. But I watched her walk away and wondered, what was Charles really planning? Because I'd thought the fight was over. But apparently it was just beginning. I barely slept the night after Danielle's visit. Her warning kept circling in my head like a wasp I couldn't sweat. Uncle Charles is planning to contest the trust. I didn't know whether to believe her or not. She lied easily. Grew up watching her parents weaponize information like it was dinner conversation. But that fear in her voice? That felt real. And if she was telling the truth, I had a problem. Because if Charles was planning something, it meant this wasn't over. He didn't get the house. Didn't get control of Grandma's memory. And that meant, in his mind, I'd humiliated him. People like Charles don't walk away quietly. They dig. They bait. They retaliate. So I did what Grandma would have done. I started planning. The next morning, I met with Elliot at his office again. He looked up from his computer the moment I walked in. "You heard something, didn't you?" I nodded. "My cousin said Charles is looking to challenge the trust. Claims Grandma wasn't in her right mind when she signed it." Elliot sighed. "That was always a possibility. He's arrogant enough to think he can rewrite the truth. And bitter enough to try." I leaned forward. "Is there anything else in the file? Something strong enough to shut him down before he starts?" Elliot reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder. "She gave me this to hold. I've never opened it. She said if anything escalated, you'd know what to do with it." I took the folder with both hands. Inside, there was a small flash drive and a handwritten sticky note. "Maple Lane on November 14th. For your eyes only." I stared at it, heart hammering. "Is that surveillance?" I asked. Elliot nodded once. She had cameras installed. Not the security system kind. These were hidden. In the living room and kitchen. She wanted to keep track of conversations after her second fall. I swallowed. "Does Charles know?" "Doubt it. She told me even Sharon didn't." I drove straight to the house. Locked the doors. Drew the blinds. Sat at Grandma's kitchen table with my laptop and the flash drive. What I found made my skin crawl. The folder was organized by dates. Simple labels. Short clips. But there was one titled, "Final Visit, Charles." I clicked. The video was grainy but clear enough. Grandma sat at the kitchen table. Pale, slow-moving, but sharp-eyed. Charles was across from her, flipping through documents. "So," he said, "if we just shift the deed now, it saves everyone hassle later." Grandma sipped her tea. "You mean it saves you hassle?" Charles forced a laugh. "Mom. Come on. You know Sharon's handling most of the bills. It just makes sense to have her name on the house now." "Sharon doesn't pay the bills," Grandma said, calm but stern. "You do. Using my checks." Charles shifted in his seat. "We're trying to help." She looked straight at him. "Help or manage?" There was a long pause. Then she added, "You think I haven't noticed the accounts? You think I'm blind?" His jaw tightened. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything," she said. "I'm saying it. You're bleeding me. And you've been doing it slowly enough that you thought I'd never catch on." "Then why haven't you said anything?" he snapped. "Because I've been watching," she said, voice flat. "And I've been planning." He stood up, angry now. "That's ridiculous. You're confused." She smiled. "I've never been more clear. You're not getting this house. Not you. Not Sharon. Not your spoiled children. You think Natalie deserves it?" He scoffed. "She's a waitress. A dropout." "She's decent," Grandma replied. "That's more than I can say for the rest of you." Charles stormed out after that. The clip ended. I sat there in stunned silence, the weight of Grandma's words pressing into me. She knew. She saw everything. And she'd recorded it. The next day, I made a copy of the file. Then I mailed an anonymous USB drive to Sharon's house. No note. No warning. Just the video. Let her chew on that. A few days later, I got a knock on the door. It was Danielle again. This time she wasn't smiling. "Mom's losing it," she said without a hello. She got a video. Of Charles. And Grandma. "It's bad." I stayed quiet. Danielle shook her head. "You had it, didn't you?" I shrugged. Grandma didn't trust either of them. She said she's going to handle it. I don't even know what that means. "I do," I said. "It means she's afraid. And for the first time, she should be." Danielle leaned against the wall, looking exhausted. I just want out of this family mess. I don't care about the house. Or the money. I just want peace. I looked her over. And for the first time, I saw something different in her. Not the performance. Not the polish. Just fatigue. Regret. Maybe even honesty. Then walk away, I said. She looked at me. Will you ever forgive us? I'm not sure yet. She nodded. Fair. 3 days passed with no word from Charles or Sharon. Then, late Friday night, I got an email. From Elliot. Natalie. You should be aware. Charles's attorney contacted us today. They're withdrawing any pending challenges. No reasons given. But I think we both know why. Regards. Elliot. I laughed. Out loud. Then I made myself tea. Sat on Grandma's old couch. And I didn't feel angry. I felt victorious. Not because I beat them. But because I did it my way. Without begging, without crying, without shrinking. And without letting them rewrite who I was. That weekend, I held a small gathering at the house. Just a few close friends. No family. We lit candles. Played Grandma's favorite records. Told stories. One of my friends asked, "Are you going to sell the place?" I looked around the room. At the wallpaper, the lamp with the wonky shade, the faint scent of rosewater. No, I said. I think I'm going to stay. And I meant it. Because for the first time in my life, I had something they couldn't take away. Not just a house. A home. And a legacy. One that finally belonged to someone who earned it. 2 weeks after Charles backed down, life finally started to feel still. The house was quiet. My work shifts were regular. I was sleeping better. Sharon hadn't tried to call again. Danielle sent one last thank you text and then faded away, just like I hoped. For once, my days weren't filled with defending myself. I cleaned Grandma's kitchen top to bottom, donated a dozen boxes of her clothes, and turned the old guest room into a small art studio. Nothing fancy, just something mine. But still, in the back of my mind, I felt it, like a wind that hadn't blown yet. There was one more shoe left to drop. I could feel it. And it dropped on a Thursday. I was watering the porch plants when an unfamiliar silver car pulled into the driveway. Not Sharon's. Not Danielle's. Not any face I recognized. The woman who stepped out looked to be in her mid-50s. Wavy dark hair. Expensive-looking scarf. Smart heels on a Thursday afternoon. She moved like someone used to getting answers fast. She didn't wave. Just walked up the steps and looked me right in the eye. "Are you Natalie?" she asked. I nodded slowly. "Can I help you?" She gave a polite smile. Too polite to trust. "My name is Lenora." There was a pause. She waited, expecting the name to mean something. It didn't. "I'm sorry. Do we know each other?" Her smile didn't budge. Not yet. But I knew Margaret. Very well, in fact. For over 25 years. The way she said Grandma's name, Margaret, not your grandmother, put my guard up instantly. I didn't invite her in. She looked past me toward the door. "I see you've settled in." I said nothing. She reached into her handbag and handed me a card. It was from a law firm in another state. Not Elliot's. "I came because Margaret made me a promise," Lenora said. "And I intend to collect on it." We sat on the porch. I didn't trust her in the house. Not yet. Lenora crossed her legs neatly, eyeing me like she was still deciding how much to reveal. "Your grandmother and I were business partners," she said finally. "We co-owned a vacation property in Maine. A cabin by a lake. Nothing fancy." I blinked. I didn't know she owned anything else. She smiled again, like a lioness seeing weakness. "I'm not surprised. Margaret kept secrets close. That was her gift. So what does this have to do with me?" She tapped the card between her fingers. "When she got sick, Margaret promised that when the cabin sold, she would pass her share to me, in writing, through a private agreement. I funded the renovations. Paid for upkeep. She hadn't been there in years. She didn't mention any of this," I said. "She didn't need to. Because it was handled separately, outside of the will." I looked at her. "Are you saying you're here to claim money?" "I'm saying I'm here to honor a legal agreement," she said, measured. "Do you have proof?" She tilted her head. "I thought you'd say that. That's why I brought this." She handed me a folder. Inside was a photocopy of a handwritten contract, dated about a year before Grandma died. Both their signatures were there. It stated that Lenora would inherit Margaret's 50% of the cabin upon sale. It looked real, but something about it didn't sit right. You're claiming this was signed privately. No witnesses. She smiled. Margaret didn't like paperwork. She trusted people. I laughed, cold and sharp. No offense, but Margaret didn't even trust her own children. Why would she hand over property to a friend with nothing but a casual signature? Lenora stiffened. I wasn't just a friend. That made me pause. She never mentioned you, I said. I know, Lenora replied. Because your family never liked me. They thought I was beneath her. I stayed quiet. Lenora's voice softened. You've probably heard stories about her being cold, guarded. But we had something real. Something no one else saw. She loved that cabin. She loved me. That agreement was her way of making sure I was taken care of. I still didn't trust her. But I didn't fully not believe her either. People are complex. Grandma was no saint. She could be harsh, secretive, loyal to a fault, and still have a life no one knew about. And Lenora, she wasn't just bluffing. She looked tired, emotional, like this actually meant something to her. Where's the cabin now? I asked. She looked down. Sold. A month ago. Quiet sale through her attorney. You're listed as the inheritor. Her share was deposited into the trust. So now I had something else. Something I didn't even know existed. And someone else who believed they deserved it. That night, I dug deeper. The cabin was real. A lakeside property with pictures still floating on a realtor's website. Cozy. Rustic. The kind of place you'd sip cocoa in while it snowed outside. The sale price? $420,000. Half of which had already been absorbed into Grandma's trust. My trust. And Lenora wasn't lying. Her name did appear on earlier maintenance permits. Contractor notes. A few utilities. But nothing legally binding. Not officially. I called Elliot the next day. He sighed when I told him. Lenora, he said. I remember her. So it's true. It's true that they were close. But Margaret made no legal amendments to the trust or her estate involving Lenora. That handwritten contract may be real, but without notarization or formal documentation, it's worthless in court. She says she doesn't want a court fight. Just what she was promised. Elliot paused. It's up to you, Natalie. You're within your rights to keep every penny. But if you want to be smart or kind, you can meet her halfway. I hung up, uncertain. What would Grandma have wanted? Did she write the letter to me because she believed Lenora wouldn't push? Or was this just another mess she left for me to clean up? 3 days passed before I saw Lenora again. This time I called her. We met at a diner halfway between her hotel and my house. She wore a burgundy blazer and a tired smile. I wore jeans and didn't bother with makeup. We were two women who had both known Margaret Collins, in very different ways. I thought you might not call, she said. I wasn't sure I would, I answered. We talked over coffee. She told me about the cabin, about summer weekends fixing up the kitchen, watching fireflies from the back porch, helping Grandma navigate the gravel path with her bad knee. She hated mosquitoes but loved the sound of the lake, Lenora said. That place brought her peace. I didn't doubt it. She slid a small velvet box across the table. She left this at the cabin for you. I opened it slowly. Inside was a locket. Tiny, silver and old. And inside it, not a photo. Just a note, folded impossibly small. Natalie, if Lenora brings you this, listen to her. Not everything I did was legal. But it was all done with love. I stared at the words. Then at Lenora. Then at the window, blinking back heat behind my eyes. Grandma hadn't forgotten me. Or her. She just didn't believe the system could protect either of us. So she left crumbs. Symbols. Warnings. And now it was my move. I split the money. Half of Grandma's cabin share went to me. Half went to Lenora. No lawyers. No fight. Just two women with grief in different shapes, learning to let go of bitterness. And move on. Later that month, I stood on the back porch of the Maple Lane house. I felt something different in the air, not just peace. Power. Because I wasn't the girl crying in her car outside a locked door anymore. I wasn't ungrateful. I was the one who inherited the whole picture, the mess, the secrets, and the strength. And I didn't need a family meeting or a courtroom to prove it. Just a letter, a locket, and the truth. After the situation with Lenora, I thought I'd closed the final chapter of Grandma's hidden life. The house was finally quiet again. My name was now the sole beneficiary listed in the trust. The financials were clean. The locket she left me sat in a drawer next to her old perfume bottle, something I sniffed every now and then when I missed her too much. And I was finally genuinely at peace. That lasted exactly 4 days. Until I got a message from a man I'd never heard of. His name was Micah. His message was short. Hi, I'm sorry to message you out of the blue. But I believe Margaret Collins was my grandmother too. I have a letter that says to contact you when she passes. I didn't know where else to go. I stared at the screen like it was written in another language. My first reaction? Scam. I almost deleted it on instinct. But something made me stop. It was the phrasing. The tone. He didn't ask for money. Didn't say anything about inheritance or property. Just a name. A letter. A quiet question. I messaged back cautiously. What letter? A few minutes passed. Then a photo appeared in my inbox. It was a worn-out envelope, cream-colored and faded around the edges. In Grandma's handwriting, it said, "For Micah, when the time comes, contact Natalie. She'll understand." I zoomed in. The handwriting was unmistakable. I read it again, then again, and still it didn't make sense. Who was this man? Why would Grandma send someone else to me, after everything? I replied again. Where did you get this? And who exactly are you? His response came quickly. I'm 23. My mother was Margaret's daughter from her first marriage. She passed when I was young. I didn't know much about her side of the family, but Margaret used to write me letters. She visited when she could. It wasn't often, but I remember her. Marcia. I froze. Grandma never talked about her first marriage. Mom had mentioned once in passing that Grandma had a child before she married Grandpa, a daughter who moved away young. I always assumed it was just one of those old family stories that no one wanted to dig into. But apparently, she was real. And so was Micah. And Grandma had kept in touch with him. All this time. We agreed to meet at a small cafe downtown. I picked a public place on purpose. I still didn't know if I was walking into something real or carefully scripted. But when Micah walked in, I recognized him instantly. Not his face, but his eyes. They looked just like Grandma's. He wore a windbreaker and jeans, clearly uncomfortable. He smiled like someone who hadn't smiled in a while. Hi, he said quietly. I nodded. Hi. We sat down. I noticed right away how nervous he was. Not fidgety, just hesitant. Like he wasn't used to being welcome. I'm not here to take anything from you, he said first. I need to make that clear. I nodded again. Okay. He took out a folded envelope from his jacket pocket. I have this, he said. She gave it to me 3 years ago. Told me not to open it until she was gone. And that if I ever did, I should bring it to you. I didn't even know who you were until I found your name online. I took the envelope. Inside was a note. Micah, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't be more present in your life. That was my failure. Not yours. I want you to reach out to Natalie. She's my granddaughter too, and she's the only one I trust. There's a small savings account under your name. It's not much, but it's what I could do quietly. She can help you access it. Be kind to each other. You're more alike than you think. There was a lump in my throat. Not because of the account or the money, but because Grandma had carried this whole secret life, all while pretending to the rest of us like everything was normal. Micah wasn't lying, and Grandma had trusted me again to handle it the right way. I helped Micah track down the account. It was at a small credit union, tucked under a trust extension Elliot didn't even know about. Nothing massive, but not pocket change either. $17,000. She'd been saving for him. Quietly. Privately. The way she always did everything that mattered. Micah cried when he saw the account. I didn't expect anything, he said. I just wanted to know if I imagined it, if I imagined her. You didn't, I said. We sat in silence for a while. I don't have a family, he said quietly. Not anymore. I looked at him. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't expected. Room. Room for someone new. Someone who didn't want to take anything. Just understand where he came from. You do now, I said. Over the next few weeks, Micah and I talked more. He told me stories Grandma had never shared with me. About summers they spent at an old rented cottage when he was 9. About letters she used to write by hand, on pale blue stationery. About how she'd sometimes cry without saying why. She used to say she'd made too many mistakes to fix, he told me once. I disagreed. She was just surrounded by the wrong people, I said. Until now. He looked at me and smiled. We started cleaning out the attic together. Sorting through old boxes. Finding relics of her life that neither of us fully understood. One box had old photographs, some of Grandma as a teenager, others with a man I didn't recognize. That's her first husband, Micah said. I stared at the photo. He was tall. Dark hair. The same strong brow Grandma had. She always said he was the love of her life. But he left. I nodded. Maybe that's why she gave us so many pieces instead of the whole truth, I said. She didn't know how to let it all out at once. Micah folded the photo gently and put it back. One evening, a week later, I got a message from Danielle. Just 2 words. I heard. Apparently, Charles had found out about Micah. How, I didn't know, probably snooping, or maybe Danielle just told him. Either way, the gossip was out now. But I didn't care anymore. Let them talk. Let them wonder how much Grandma gave to me, how much she hid from them. The truth wasn't just about money. It was about trust. And she had trusted me with every version of herself. The quiet matriarch, the regretful mother, the secret keeper, and the protector. That's what they'd never understand. They thought the will was the prize. But I got the real inheritance. The truth, the legacy, and the chance to rewrite what came next. The house on Maple Lane had more corners than I realized. By now, Micah had become a fixture in my life. Not in a loud, overwhelming way, but like someone who'd always belonged without knowing it. We moved through the house gently, each room holding something we didn't know we'd needed. A photo here. A note there. Each item felt like a breadcrumb Grandma had left behind, not for everyone, but just for us. That's what made it feel so different. We weren't invading a legacy. We were uncovering it. It was on one of those rainy, quiet Saturdays that we found something strange in the attic. We were organizing boxes when Micah accidentally kicked the corner of an old wooden trunk. It bumped the floor, and a faint thunk echoed beneath the boards. Not the usual hollow sound, but something else. He paused. Did you hear that? I nodded. Yeah. We both crouched and started knocking gently along the floorboards. Sure enough, there was one spot where the echo changed, like something had been stashed underneath. The wood was slightly raised, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. Micah pried it up using the back of a screwdriver. And underneath? A faded manila envelope, taped shut with brittle yellow masking tape. On the front, in Grandma's handwriting, were 5 words. For the last 2 left. We looked at each other. Micah's eyes were wide. Do you think she meant us? I nodded slowly. I think she did. We opened it carefully. Inside were 2 letters. One addressed to me, and one to Micah. And a third item, a folded legal-sized sheet with a property sketch. At first, I thought it was another house. But it wasn't. It was land. I opened my letter first. The handwriting was shakier than in the others. This was written closer to the end. Natalie, if you're reading this, you already know more about me than I ever told the others. I'm sorry for that. For the way I kept things buried. I didn't do it to hide from you. I did it to protect the last good things I had. This land belonged to my mother. It's not in any trust. It's in my maiden name. No one else knows it exists. Not Charles, not Sharon, not even Elliot. I paid the taxes quietly every year. I didn't leave it in the will because I knew they'd fight for it if they found out. I don't want it developed. I don't want it sold. I want it cared for. It's yours and Micah's now. Do with it what feels right. Together. Grandma. Micah read his letter next. It was shorter, but just as direct. Micah, you came into my life like a second chance. I didn't deserve your patience, but you gave it anyway. This land is part of your roots, even if no one else claims them. You and Natalie, you're the ones I trusted to build something better than what came before. Don't let them erase you. Or each other. Take the land. Make it count. We sat in stunned silence. Land. Neither of us had ever heard a word about Grandma owning a separate property, especially not something she'd kept hidden from everyone. The sketch included coordinates. Somewhere just outside of Fairgrove, about an hour's drive north. Rural. Wooded. There was no address, just a crude boundary sketch and a note that said, "Use the red mailbox." It's still there. 2 days later, we went to find it. It was a winding drive. Empty roads, tall trees, soft fog rolling over the hills like a blanket. It felt untouched, like the kind of place time forgot on purpose. And then, as promised, we saw it. A red mailbox, rusted but standing, by the side of a narrow dirt path leading into the woods. Micah stopped the car. We looked at each other. "You ready?" he asked. "I think so," I said. We stepped out. The air smelled like pine and something older, like roots, like memory. The dirt trail crunched beneath our feet as we walked. And then it opened up. About 2 acres of wild, overgrown land, a clearing that must have once been used for something. Old posts lined a faded perimeter. A collapsed tool shed lay in the far corner. But the view? It was beautiful. You could see the edge of a still, glassy lake just beyond the tree line. Birds chirped lazily from the canopy. A deer darted through the brush and paused to stare at us, as if wondering who the new owners were. We stood in silence for a long time. Then Micah whispered, "She brought us here for a reason." Back at the house, we contacted the county. The land was real. Still listed under Grandma's maiden name. Untouched, unclaimed, and tax paid for decades. One of the last undeveloped lots near the lake. How did she even keep this a secret? I asked Elliot on the phone later that week. He laughed softly. Margaret was full of surprises. I knew she had fire, but this takes some planning. What should we do with it? He paused. Whatever you want. But from what I knew of her, she'd probably want you to build, not sell. Micah and I agreed. We'd turn the land into something meaningful. Not a rental. Not a vacation home. But a sanctuary. The plan came together faster than I expected. Micah had done landscape work before, and I had a modest savings from my new stability. Together, we mapped it out. A small cabin with solar panels, rain catchers, a garden. A writing loft. A fire pit with room for friends. No Wi-Fi. Just nature. Just us, building something Grandma never got to see, but clearly dreamed of. We didn't invite Charles or Sharon. We didn't explain anything to the cousins. We let them sit in their silence, bitter, confused, left out, the way they had left me. On the first night we camped there, the stars came out like I'd never seen them before. The sky was wide, the kind that makes you feel small in the best way. Micah sat beside me on the porch steps of the half-built cabin, sipping tea. "She gave us a beginning," he said. "Yeah," I replied. "Not an ending. A beginning." I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the locket again. The same one Lenora had delivered. I opened it. No photos. Just the tiny folded paper still inside. But this time, I unfolded it one more time and found something I'd missed before. A second fold. Even smaller. Written in the corner in Grandma's fading handwriting were 4 more words. "You were my peace." I blinked back tears. Not because I was sad, but because I finally believed her. After all the secrets, the silence, the family that discarded me, she hadn't. She'd just been waiting for the right time to tell the truth. And now it was ours. The cabin was almost finished. 3 weeks of hard work, long drives, sore muscles, and shared meals under the stars had turned the once-forgotten land into something real. Micah had taught me how to use a power drill without injuring myself. I taught him how to cook Grandma's molasses cookies from memory. We weren't building a house. We were building peace. For the first time in my life, I could breathe without looking over my shoulder. No more Sharon. No more Charles. no one demanding explanations. Until the day he showed up. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The sun was high, and I was sitting on the cabin steps, hammer in hand, trimming a window frame. I heard a car before I saw it. An expensive one, deep gray, sharp curves. It didn't belong here. Too polished. Too loud. Micah came around the back, wiping his hands on a towel. "Visitor?" he asked. The car stopped just at the tree line. Out stepped Charles, wearing slacks and sunglasses, like he'd been plucked from a boardroom and dropped into the woods by mistake. Micah stiffened. "You want me to?" "No," I said. "Let's see what he wants." Charles made the walk toward the cabin slower than usual, as if trying to compose himself or rehearse a line he thought would work. He stopped 10 feet away. "Natalie," he said. I didn't stand. "Charles." He looked around like he didn't know where he was. "So, this is it, huh? The mystery land." I didn't reply. He took off his sunglasses, squinting into the sun. "I found out 2 days ago. Some county clerk mentioned your name on a parcel. Small town. People talk. Of course they do. I have to say," he added, glancing around, "not what I expected. No Wi-Fi? No pool." I laughed under my breath. "That's the point." Charles sighed, looking suddenly more tired than smug. "I didn't come here to fight," he said. "I came to talk." "Why now?" "Because I saw something in Grandma's handwriting, something in a file Elliot didn't think I'd find." My chest tightened. "What did you find?" He stepped forward, carefully, like trying not to scare a wild animal. There was a ledger. Handwritten. In the margins she'd written, "Don't tell the others. Natalie's the only one who still listens." I blinked. "That's what broke me," he said quietly. "Not the money. Not the land. That." For a moment, I didn't say anything. Because part of me had waited my whole life to hear that. That he knew he'd lost something more than cash. That he felt it. And yet, I didn't trust it. "You came out here because you lost control," I said. "Not because you found a conscience." He didn't argue. "I came because I'm tired," he said. "You won. And maybe you deserve to." Micah stepped beside me then, arms crossed. Charles noticed. "You're the other one," Charles said. "Micah," he replied flatly. "The one Grandma actually liked." Charles smirked bitterly. "Right. The mystery grandkid." I stood then. "If you came to dig for something else, some secret clause, some document to spin, you're wasting your time. We found everything. She gave us everything. Not just property. Her truth." He didn't move. "I came," he said slowly, "to ask one thing." I tilted my head. "Really?" "Yes." I waited. "I'm being pushed out of the family company. They blame me for what happened with the will. With the trust. With you. I don't need money. But if I could get a recommendation, a letter of character from you, it might soften things." I stared at him. He had the nerve, the audacity, to ask me for a favor after everything. "You mean," I said, laughing bitterly, "you want me to help clean up your reputation so you can sit back in a leather chair again?" Charles looked down. "It's just a letter." "No," I said. "It's my name. And I'm not using it to rewrite your mess." He nodded slowly. "I figured you'd say that." Then his face hardened. But I had to try. He turned to walk back to his car. "Charles," I said, stopping him. He turned, one eyebrow raised. "She forgave you, you know." He blinked. "What?" "She wrote it in one of her last notes," I continued. "Said she hated how tired she let you make her. But she forgave you anyway. Just not enough to leave you her name." Charles didn't respond. He just looked away, not ashamed, not angry. Just small. Then he got in the car and drove away. That night, I found Micah by the lake, tossing pebbles into the water. "I don't think he'll come back," he said. "I don't either. But I don't think we've heard the last of the family." I nodded. "They're watching," I said. "Waiting to see if we mess up." He smirked. "Let them watch." 2 days later, a package arrived at the Maple Lane house. No return address. Inside, a box of family photo albums. All originals. All clearly taken from Sharon's house. Taped to the top was a post-it note. "I don't want them anymore. You earned them. Danielle." The albums were filled with moments I'd forgotten. and moments I never saw. Grandma laughing at someone's birthday. My own childhood drawings clipped to her fridge. Micah, as a toddler, sitting on Grandma's lap with a picture book open. They weren't giving us gifts. They were surrendering. Quietly. Bitterly. But still, letting go. Micah and I spent that night flipping through the albums. "This one," he said, holding up a photo of Grandma in the garden. "This is how I remember her." "Me too." We sat in silence for a while. Then I asked the question we'd both been dancing around. "What happens next?" He looked at me. "You mean the land? The cabin?" "No," I said. "Us." He smiled. "I think we keep building." Spring came early that year. The lake behind the cabin thawed before April. Wildflowers started blooming across the edge of the property like they'd been waiting years for someone to actually see them. Every breeze carried a mix of pine, wet earth, and something else, hope. The cabin was done. Not Pinterest perfect, not polished, but real. Warm wood tones, soft lights, a tiny kitchen, 2 reading chairs by the fireplace. Outside, we'd built a circular bench around the oldest oak tree and called it the Circle of Peace. That's where we sat most evenings, Micah and I, saying nothing and saying everything. We had peace. But the question kept pressing at the edges of my mind. Now what? Because Grandma hadn't just given us secrets. She'd given us choices. And I wasn't sure yet if just living quietly was enough. It was Micah who said it first. We were stacking firewood one morning when he turned to me and said, "Do you think this could be bigger?" "Bigger how?" I asked. He looked around. I mean, not in size. In meaning. He paused. "What if we didn't keep this just for us?" I didn't say anything. But I knew exactly what he meant. Because over the past few months, we'd gotten emails. Messages. Notes from strangers. People Grandma had touched. People who found my name through some article I barely remembered publishing. Women and men who were cut out of family trusts. Who walked away from cruel parents. Who never got the letter or the locket or the explanation. They wrote things like, "Your story made me feel seen. I thought I was the only one. I wish I had a place to go like that." Micah looked at me. What if we gave them one? We didn't rush it. We sat with the idea like it was a sleeping animal. Fed it quietly. Waited to see if it would grow. It did. The cabin became the first seed of something new. A retreat. A space. A place for people like us. People who were never the golden child. People labeled ungrateful or too sensitive or too strong-willed. People who needed to breathe without apology. We called it the Legacy Room. Not a business. Not a resort. Just a project. A mission. Quietly funded by the trust Grandma left behind, the one nobody thought I deserved. We started small. 1 guest a month. Then 2. We didn't charge them. They had to apply, not with resumes or credit scores, but with letters. We asked, "What would peace look like for you, even if just for a weekend?" And they answered. There was Joanna, who left an abusive household at 19 and hadn't taken a vacation in 12 years. She sat on the porch and cried for 6 straight hours, not because she was sad, but because, "This is the first place no one expects anything from me." There was Mark, a former youth pastor who'd been outed and disowned. He spent his stay writing songs on the porch and left us a notebook full of lyrics. There was Lena, whose own grandmother died before she ever got to say goodbye. She planted sunflowers along the back edge of the lake in her honor. Each one added something. A story. A memory. A little more soul to the land. And none of them asked who owned it. Because by then, it didn't feel like ownership. It felt like guardianship. One day, I got a message from Danielle. Just 4 words. I saw the website. There was no venom in her voice this time. No sarcasm. Just quiet acknowledgement. She didn't ask to visit. I didn't offer. Some things don't need to be reopened. But I think we understood each other, finally. She'd chosen her path. I'd chosen mine. And I wasn't bitter anymore. I was just free. Micah and I added a final room to the cabin. Not a guest room. A memory room. Inside, we put the photo albums Danielle had surrendered. Framed a copy of Grandma's handwritten locket note. Set up a display of things we'd found in the attic. Old letters, a recipe book, a pair of gloves from her first job. On the wall, we hung a sign, painted simply in Micah's handwriting. You were my peace. That's what the room became. A place for anyone who needed to feel like they were finally enough, just by existing. And me? I kept writing. Not to vent. Not for revenge. But because I finally had something to say. And people who wanted to listen. People who saw themselves in the girl who was banned from the will reading, laughed at, discarded, only to become the one who held the map no one else could read. So if you're reading this now, wherever you are, maybe you've been the uninvited one. The scapegoat. The black sheep. Maybe they told you were too much. Or not enough. Maybe they wrote you out, from the trust, from the story, from their version of the truth. But here's what I know. You are not ungrateful. You are undefeated. And there's a place for you, even if you have to build it from scratch. You are someone's piece. Even if that someone is you.